A very good morning to one and all. Welcome to the Straits Times' Stop Scams webinar, the scam scourge and how to tackle it. I'm Hairianto Diman, multimedia correspondent with the Straits Times, and I'll be the moderator for today's webinar. First of all, thank you all for taking the time to join this webinar, both online and right here in the ST studio. Today's Stop Scams webinar is brought to you in partnership with Singapore Pools and is part of the inaugural IMDA Digital for Life Festival. Now, this festival is Singapore's flagship tech event aimed at encouraging Singaporeans to embrace digital technology to enrich their lives. Our panelists for this webinar will discuss, among other things, what is being done to combat scams, how victims are affected by scams, and how to protect your loved ones from being duped. Now let's get to know our panelists for today. First, we have Deputy Assistant Commissioner of Police, Ms. Aileen. Now she's the Assistant Director of the Anti-Scam Command of the Commercial Affairs Department. Welcome to the show, DAC. Tell us a bit more about yourself.
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Aileen. I've been with the police force for 22 years. Together with my team, we set up the Anti-Scam Center in 2019, Anti-Scam Division in 2021, and Anti-Scam Command this year. I just want to say, fighting scams is a community effort. Remember this.
Well said, well said. And we'll get to you again on what AS Command does just in a bit. Up next, we have Dr. Majeed Khader, Chief Psychologist at the Home Affairs Ministry. Welcome, Doctor. A bit more about yourself, Dr. Majeed.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Majeed, and I'm trained as a criminal psychologist, and I've been working with the Ministry of Home Affairs for almost close to 30 years. I have had a deep interest in studying lying behavior and deception, and more recently, how we can apply it to scam fighting. Yeah.
Okay, we'll get more from you later on as well, tips and just profiles of scam victims. And last but not least on our panel today, we have Mr. Xavier Loh, now Chief Executive of the Cyber Youth Academy, which advocates the safe adoption of technology here in Singapore. Xavier, welcome to our webinar today. Tell us more about yourself.
Hi everyone, I'm Xavier. I head the Cyber Youth Academy, which believes in using education to help Singaporeans safely adopt technology into their lives, as well as safely use technology as we become more digitalized as a society.
Okay, once again, welcome to the webinar panelists. Now, job scams, love scams, investment scams. Scams are so rampant today that they have become a social scourge. Every other day here in SD, we receive emails from the police and various agencies warning the public of existing scams or of a new scam variant. Between 2016 and mid-2021, scam victims here have lost almost $1 billion to various schemes. And just last year alone, the police have arrested and investigated more than 7,000 scammers and money mules. Now, in the fight against the scam scourge, the Anti-Scam Division was formed last year to reorganize and consolidate all scam fighting units under the Police Commercial Affairs Department. The division was expanded in March to become the Anti-Scam Command, which brings together all scam fighting units across the entire Singapore Police Force. I want to start with you, DAC. DAC, tell us a bit more about the Anti-Scam Command and how does it combat scams?
All right, so the Anti-Scam Command was formed on the 22nd of March this year. The date is quite easy to remember, 22322. The main objective is to consolidate the management of scam cases within a single command within the Singapore Police Force. So we fight scams using 5 tenets, SCAMS. So basically we use scams to fight scams. What does all these 5 tenets stand for? First and foremost, strengthen sense making and leveraging technology. We hope that we can detect scams, sense make them, and alert victims even before they realize that they have been scammed. C, coordinated approach and close collaboration and enhanced partnership with our key stakeholders. Many people would know about our Project Frontier, which stands for Fund Recovery, Operations and Networks Team, Inspiring Effective Resolution. So what this team does is that we gather a group of key stakeholders, which comprises the online marketplaces, the banks, the fintechs, financial institutions, government agencies, and telecommunication companies to come together to fight scams, basically to disrupt scammers' operation and mitigate victims' losses. A, agile response by amplifying our international cooperation. Last year, after the formation of our anti-scam division, we have successfully busted 16 transnational scam syndicates, leading to the arrest of more than 230 syndicate members. So we have got our successes last year, but what we hope to do is to amplify this effort and to get in touch with more overseas law enforcement agencies, because we know that more than 90% of the scams are originated from overseas. M, maximize effective management of scam cases. With the formation of Anti-Scam Command, we hope to have an overview and oversight of all the scam investigation within the Singapore Police Force. And finally, the S, swift and strategic actions towards scams through the formation of the Scam Strike Teams over 7 Land Division.
DC, earlier on, of course, I gave quite a broad overview of the scam trends that we have here in Singapore. And earlier on, before this webinar, we had a little chat, and you were sharing with me the trends that you are seeing right now. If you could share with us, the sort of scam trends that you are seeing, what is on the rise now, just to give a lay of the land.
Okay, if we look at it in 2016, we have got about 5,383 scam cases in Singapore. Just over a period of 5 years, that is until last year, 2021, we have got 23,931 cases. That is 345% increase. The main cause of it last year was actually job scams that hit us really hard. It started from May onwards. From January to May last year, it was like not many cases. In 2020, there was only 132 cases. But last year itself, job scam hit us 4,554 cases. There is so many percentage of increase. So what does this job scam entail? So since I'm given the chance today, I better take this opportunity to share with everyone. So just now, we have got a short clip on job scam. But generally, job scam, usually our victim will get hooked on by the scammers via WhatsApp and Telegram. So in the past, we don't have all these enhanced communication channels. So nowadays, it's very easy to target victims. So the scammers will generally request the victims to buy a certain merchandise, let's say $100, and thereafter you get your job is to help the scammer purchase merchandise, and they will pay you like $10 for every merchandise of maybe $100. So you get, wow, this is quite a good deal, 10% of $100 being invested, Then they will say, okay, this is an easy job, right? So they will ask you, are you willing to join us? So when the victim said that, okay, they are willing to, okay, these scammers will then give them jobs merchandise like $100, $200, then it will go up to $1,000, $2,000, sometimes $10,000. So that is when the victim realized that, hey, I don't have any more money, maybe I want to call it a stop already. But the scammer will tell them, no, you have to fulfill 40 orders or 60 orders. So at this point of time, by the time the victim realized that they have been scammed, they are usually very late. There are actually many other variants of job scam. It's very interesting. People try to look for part-time job or additional money, right? Because you don't have money. But these are the jobs that requires you to take up, money from your own pocket, right? So if you have got a job that is like that, or a job that requires you to do bank transfer, please do not take up. Most likely it's scam. It's okay to earn less, but don't lose your life savings.
Yeah, definitely. That's good advice right there. And good transition right there, because Dr. Majeed, I want to talk about the profiles of scam victims. Earlier on, we heard DAC, giving examples of people looking for jobs and then they fall prey to job scams. Based on scam cases that you've seen and you've worked on, who are more vulnerable or susceptible to falling prey to scams? Are they usually the older folks?
Yeah, that's a great question. We are very concerned about who is vulnerable. So if you ask, is there a profile, like a demographic profile, right? It's very hard to answer that question, because anybody can fall victim, right, to a scam. There are of course subcategories, and we know that younger people are more attracted by e-commerce issues, so they could be victims there. We do know that people who are looking for love may fall for love scams. But in general, if you ask that general question, like is there one profile, right, that fits all sorts of scam types? Answer will be no lah. It'll be hard to find that. But subtypes, yes, we are aware, and we are very targeted in the outreach that the police and the Ministry of Home Affairs has taken to make sure that they do not fall victim to it. Let me answer the question in a slightly different way as well. If you ask whether there's a psychological, emotional kind of makeup profile, yes, we do see some patterns, and we have done scientific studies. We've collected the data, we've analyzed it, and there are a few things that we have found. One is people who are under stress, right? They make decisions very quickly. So we see that with the victim profile. So people who are under stress, we also see that, for example, if they have low self-esteem. So when we do questionnaires and we study the victim profile, we see that they are lower on self-esteem. So there's something going on in their lives, They're very stressed, they have low self-esteem, and also sometimes they have impulsive behaviors. So this earlier point about stop and think and all that, very valuable advice. Seeking support, getting the advice from other people. If you're stuck, talk to someone and say, is this real or not? Should I even go for this? That's also very good advice. So we see there's a pattern of some of these things. And so connected to this, especially the stress part of it, right? This is where we are trying to say, look out for one another. So in our psychologist team, we call it guardianship lah. You have to look out for one another. If you know a family member, a friend, right, a colleague who looks very stressed out, right? Reach out to them, give them some support, because it's a very private thing, If you are online and you think this is a good deal, or if you think you found the right partner and you are having these private conversations, you want to keep it private, right? So you're not going to tell everybody. So you do have to, as a friend, reach out to people and say, is there any way I can help? You want to talk about something? That's guardianship. So one key message is, apart from learning how to deal with scams ourselves, we should also help others.
I will get to the point about how scams affect victims in just a bit. I just want to go to Xavier right now. Xavier, tell us, you are the Chief Executive of Cyber Youth Academy. You work with youths, right? Yes. About cyber hygiene, cyber cleanliness, adoption of good cyber habits. Tell us a bit more about Cyber Youth Academy.
Sure. Well, Cyber Youth Academy is a fairly new division that started up as branched out from Cyber Youth Singapore, which focuses on using education to promote the safe adoption of so-called being in the online space. Right now, we have this campaign called the Surf Safe campaign, which we are running with secondary school students. And mainly what we do is through digital resilience, which we classify in 3 subcategories: the cybersecurity, digital wellness, and digital literacy. We try to make a syllabus that comprises of these 3 aspects in order to help these youths to stay safe online. Because the main idea of this campaign is that although scams, yes, they are scary, but we do feel really that we can combat them. And it's not just about helping the youths identify like what scams are currently out there, but more so of creating like a foundational kind of basis of them trying to help them to understand how does a scam look like. What can I do when I see someone that's affected by a scam? Yeah, so because the scammers, they're really smart, right? So as we go through different challenges, for example, COVID, then we'll see job scams increase. As we become more digitalized, everyone goes onto e-commerce, for example, then we have e-commerce scams, right? So we never know what is the next scam.
Yep.
Yeah, but what we can do is start from the youths, help them create a strong foundation to identify these scams, and they can be their own detectors in the future. Yeah, and more importantly, these youths, they can also be advocates. So I'm not sure, but I'm not sure about you guys, but in my family, the youths are always the ones that the elderly or the parents go to for help when we're not unsure about something, right?
Yeah.
Regarding technology. So let them be also be the source of information when their parents or their elderly, they receive a suspicious phishing message, for example, and they are unsure. Let these youths be empowered, to help these people in their communities, right? To identify these scams.
I want to touch on that. It's interesting that you said they become the source of information. It is, of course, the belief, the conception that youths are more digitally savvy.
Right.
They are more aware.
Yes.
So my question to you, Xavier, is, are they more cyber savvy when it comes to other age groups, when it comes to scams?
Right.
And does that mean then, they are less susceptible to falling prey?
Actually, I think that is, like what you mentioned, is a misconception. Because youths, more than ever nowadays, we use the internet more than any other age group, right? And when we grew up with technology like that, there's a certain amount of complacency that we'll eventually get, right? Every time we don't read terms and conditions, we just check a box, right? And that kind of attitude, right? It will carry on. When we receive an SMS, for example, just that day, actually, if I can share like a personal story, I was waiting for this DHL shipment. I waited for like 2 months for it, right? And somehow the scammers know that the courier is DHL, right? And I actually received a message from DHL, and it was actually spoofed. Right, so it came under the DHL, where I always got all of my my package tracking information, and but there are certain things that you realize that this message is actually a bit suspicious, right? Like how the link is shortened, how the way that there's grammatical errors, but these, although these are methods that we can currently identify scams, these scammers, they get smarter every day. One day maybe they'll fix their grammar, and it will be harder and harder. That's my point, to spot these.
And so you mentioned in your case that DHL message, it was in the same thread of the DHL messages that you've received previously, the legit ones.
That's right.
And this was exactly what happened in the OCBC phishing scam saga. That brought the whole scourge to the fore. Just a bit of a background, nearly 470 people lost at least $8.5 million at that time.
Yeah.
Fortunately, in the OCBC saga, victims were compensated by the bank, but authorities have stressed that it shouldn't be set as a precedent, right, in terms of money recovery. In cases where the money is not able to be recovered, Dr. Majeed, beyond losing the money, how else do scams affect people psychologically, emotionally, mentally, and do the different types of scams bring about varying impact?
Yeah, they definitely do, and it's not just about losing money. It's also about losing face, right? Especially in our Asian society, you lose money, it's very hard to tell your family, and sometimes people don't talk to others, to get some help. So it's about losing dignity, losing that sense of safety, psychological safety. So beyond just the financial impact, right? There's so many other kinds of impact. We've seen suicides, right? We've seen people driven to the edge, anxiety, depression, some kind of traumatic impact. Their life changes. It must change if you're losing your entire life savings, right? Can you imagine? You look forward to a nice retirement, you look forward to money put aside for your children, for things, and you lose it all, and you feel so silly and so upset, and you're so hard on yourself. So yes, there's an impact. Aileen, what do you think?
Yeah, actually I thought maybe I should also take this opportunity to share a story. Sometimes people ask me, hey, Aileen, why do you fight the scam the way you do, doing so much? So I want to share with everyone this story that I've encountered, which gave me the impetus, and my team the impetus to really fight. So what happened was, more than 2 years ago, we received this case whereby this foreign national, he came to Singapore to work. So one day he decided to send his wife back to the home country to deliver to the second child. Thereafter, he brought his 9-year-old daughter to the brother-in-law's house, which was just a few blocks away for the night. Then over the night, he was sharing with his brother-in-law that he could have fallen prey to scam. That was a tech support scam where the scammer got him to download a software called TeamViewer. And thereafter, the scammer was able to monitor what he was doing to the computer, to his bank account, and see his access code, the password, and all the things. So he suspected that he could have fallen prey. So the brother-in-law told him, he told him, why don't you go home and retrieve your laptop? I'll go with you to the police station on the following morning. So on the following morning, he left the brother-in-law's house and he went back home. But he did not return. So the brother-in-law brought his 9-year-old daughter to the house. And as they opened the door, they saw this foreign national hanging from the ceiling. Imagine the 9-year-old daughter seeing the father hanging from the ceiling. So the brother-in-law quickly brought him down. His pulse was still weak, and he got sent to the hospital, but he passed away a few days later. There at the scene, it was very sad. There was a suicide note that states, XX Bank and police, please help me retrieve back my $80,000, my life savings, and that's it. So honestly, scammers not only take away people's money, they also take away people's lives as well as their families. So this is one sad story that we know, but there are many others that we don't know. Even for the case of job scam, one teenager actually lost $8,000 over and committed suicide. So like what Dr. Majeed has mentioned, so sometimes emotionally they are really very affected. It's really not just money. It could be the face, the embarrassment, the shamefulness that they are going through. And that is why we always advocate that if you have a problem, speak to your family members, your friends, your loved one. If the scammer tells you that you shouldn't, this is top secret, you are helping me on a mission, I'm from China official, please do not believe them. Or they'll tell you that this is between me and you, the love is between me and you shouldn't involve third party. Don't believe all them. Sometimes it's good to share and talk about your problem and seek help from all around you. Honestly, if you talk it out, you also would feel better.
DSC, Dr. Majeed, I just want to understand, because, in the two instances that you shared, you said that, it led to committing suicide.
Yeah.
Is there a threat? Are you seeing a trend there of, it eventually leading to suicide? Is it a rising trend?
Suicide is a bit hard to say, but the trend is one of people being emotionally wrecked and very upset and very angry, very disappointed. So the emotional extremes we see. Yeah.
What about you, DSC? With the cases that you've worked on and all that?
Yeah, we do. Okay, there are some suicide cases that we know. In fact, just about a month or so ago, in fact, that was not a month already, January, one of my officers called me over the phone and said, ma'am, could you go over, where are you now? I say, I was at Serangoon, I just finished my IPPT medical screening. Can you go down to Buangkok to go and help IO so crack, huh? I said, what happened? I said, hey, one scam victim want to commit suicide. So what happened was I rushed down and I was told that this is a victim of China official impersonation scam. She lost a total of $70,000 over. That day, my officer actually went to her house to gather evidence. So for China official impersonation scam, you usually will need to go to the house and then engage the victim, because that is where the fake China official or their Interpol staff will send fake warrant of arrest or go and engage you to ask you to pass money. So we need to go there to walk the ground with them to view the CCTV. So he was knocking on the door. But the door, nobody came and opened the door, so he decided to call her phone. And he can hear the ringing tone from inside the house. Then what happened was that he continued, he was very persistent. An experienced IO will know that if the phone is inside the house, most likely somebody is inside the house, yes. So he continued to knock on the door. Suddenly the door creaked open, And there was the victim. She said that she wanted to commit suicide by gas inhalation. So he quickly go and turn off the gas stove. By the time I went there, the ambulance was already there, and they took her to a hospital. She survived. So what she shared was that she was totally distraught because she was alone. She was staying alone. She doesn't. Her children are not staying with her, so she don't have anyone to reach out to. She lost this. This is actually her life savings. She just feel very hopeless, and she was very grateful that my officer went there in time and saved her life. So she was very grateful to my officer. So yeah, these are stories that we have heard, that we know, and I believe there are also many cases out there, but we don't know. Yeah. So that is why the community needs to come together to fight scam.
Yeah. Xavier, I noticed you reacted a little bit because earlier on when DAC Aileen was sharing about the story about the foreign national and the team viewer.
Right.
You know, I saw you reacted a little bit.
Yeah. Well, actually, because one of my friends actually had this scam before, but fortunately, when she told me about it, like she actually texted me a few years back, so I think that time they weren't that smart yet. So usually, you know, they lock your computer and then you just can't access anything. You have to enter a passcode, right? And then they basically you have to transfer them money. They give you the passcode. So at that time, the scammer wasn't that smart. So I said, why not you try 1, 2, 3, 4, and it worked. Yeah. So that was the password at that time. And she got full access to her computer back, but of course she has to format everything because you never know whether or not they plant something inside. But actually, I wanted to add on to the points that were mentioned here. I think that as we can see, it's not really about the life savings, just the life savings, because you can earn money back. But the scammers, they want you to be in a position where you feel helpless and detached and isolated from the rest of society, right? That you can't seek help, that you are alone in this. So I think that it's extremely crucial that, as you mentioned earlier, Doctor, that that in Asian societies we have so much fear, I would say, of being judged when we get scammed like this. You know, a kid would think that their parent would never think that they are so naive to fall to a scam like this. So these are things that I feel, if you really want to combat scams, we have to address how these victims, for example, can anonymously seek help to so-called confide with someone, you know, when they feel uncomfortable speaking to their close relatives, because if the scammers are allowed, you know, to have this control over us, we are just right where they want us.
And good point that you brought up, Xavier. You talked about, you know, when these victims, they come out to say that, you know, oh, they've been scammed and all that. Almost usually the first response would be, yeah, why are you so naive? Why are you so stupid? So my question now is, you know, in terms of profiling as well, do you only see people who are stupid who fall for this type of scams?
No, certainly not. In all the studies have been shown, very clever people, and I'm sure Aileen would also attest to that. Very clever people, well-educated people can fall prey as well. Sometimes it's that moment of impulsivity, you know. All right, and so that's why this message of stop and think, look for the signs, is very important. Take a bit, just slow down. But as what Xavier said, they have this trust built with you. They want you to move with the momentum, right? Because the moment you slow down, the scammers have lost them, right? So that's exactly what we need. So to me, IQ is not a factor. Anybody can fall prey. So we shouldn't look at just, you know, a particular type of person. Do you have a comment?
Yes, I have another story to share. So we always say that scammers will target naive people, people who are vulnerable, who are less vigilant. But we've got this case of a lawyer. So this lawyer actually wanted to borrow $3 million from the licensed moneylender. So he went to the MinLaw website, and then under the MinLaw website, there's a registry of moneylenders and pawnbroker, a list of licensed moneylenders. Honestly speaking, how many people out there will know that there is such a website to tell you that there are licensed moneylenders? So he went there, he narrowed down to 20, then from 20 he narrowed down to one particular licensed moneylender. Interestingly, this licensed moneylenders does not have an official website. So I think the scammers know about this. They created a website with that licensed moneylender's name. And then what he did was he told the licensed moneylender or the scammer that he wanted to borrow $3 million. And the scammer was really very good. They told them that now is COVID period, so we don't need to meet. By right, if you borrow money, you take a loan from licensed moneylender, you are supposed to meet them once at the first meeting. So they didn't meet. And the scammer was so good that they told him you have to pay an administrative fee, service charges, deposits, and then he paid $521,000, and yet he haven't gotten his loan. What happened was he discovered that very fast, and he alerted my anti-scam center, and we helped him recover $426,000. He was really very lucky because how many of the victims actually can recover back the money? So this is a case of a lawyer being scammed. We have got professors, we have got very senior government servant as well. So there are many types of people. Everybody can be vulnerable. So there is no single profile that we can narrow down to.
And it seems that scams are also evolving as well, right? They're getting smarter. Scammers are getting smarter. And I just want to, go on to our first question right here. Now, for those of us who are watching, we are now going to go to our Q&A. We're going to open the floor to questions from our viewers. If you have any questions at all, we are taking live questions. You can send in your questions to us. I have a question here from Mr. Lo Siu Bing. Apologies if I mispronounced your name. So he is asking, and I'm going to combine a few questions together because, we have quite a bit of questions here. As new scams evolve and get more sophisticated, how can local authorities stay ahead to protect and educate the public? And I'm going to add on to say, we've talked about how, you got to get yourself educated, you got to be self-aware. So the next part of the question is the onus on the individuals to be vigilant, to stay, wary and in this fight against scams?
Okay, I'll take the question first. As I've earlier said, fighting scams is a community effort. We should not do victim blaming. I think at the end of the day, it is not just the police. Police alone is not sufficient. We do not have sufficient resources to fight the scammers. We need collaboration from our key stakeholders, the government agencies, IMDA, Ministry of Home Affairs, to come together, the banks. Now, what we need the banks to do is to freeze bank account at a much faster rate. It's very interesting. When we first came out, our publicity on our anti-scam center came out, there were quite a number of banks who reached out to us. We started with 3 local banks, DBS, OCBC, and UOB. But after reading about us in the news, they all quite a number came forward. And so far, we have more than 70 stakeholders with us. And if you think that it is just one mass briefing to all these stakeholders, except for one time where we briefed 11 of them together, the rest of them is individual briefing. So what we did was we need really the stakeholders to come together to fight scams with us, terminate the telephone lines fast. Not only just telephone lines, now we have gotten into VoIP lines where victims actually can contact them. It's not +65. VoIP lines are not +65. So we need them to terminate all this number fast for us, freeze bank account fast for us, help us do fund tracing fast, also remove the URLs, block them fast. At our end, we will continue to step up our enforcement to fight scams. We'll continue also to link up with the overseas law enforcement agencies. We hope more can come on board. But sometimes different jurisdiction has different legislation and different kind of powers and efforts. So in my point of view, I think it is a community effort. We should not just do victim blaming.
More can be done on the victim's part, you think, then?
Yeah, I mean, let me build on what DAC Aileen is saying. And the police has done wonderful work in terms of responding to this. But as a psychologist and building on what Xavier said also, I think what is needed is a new set of skills. I mean, we've typically talked about IQ, EQ, even social intelligence, right? But I think you alluded to what we need is actually a kind of cyber digital intelligence. The world has changed, right? We need to know about password designs. We need to know how scammers work, like how they can use TeamViewer to take over your computer. We need to know how SMSs work. What is a phishing email? What's a genuine SMS? When we should be careful before we jump on an SMS. It's a new set of skills that we need from a preventive angle, from a society, community angle. In that sense, the individual matters, right? Because the government cannot do everything for you, right? We need to know that it's a new world that requires digital cyber intelligence. Yes. Yeah.
I have a very interesting proposition from Mr. Lim Teck Siong Thomas here. He is asking, to avoid being scammed, is it possible not to own a mobile phone or install any filter to get rid of overseas calls? So essentially what he's saying is, don't have the mobile phone so you will not be contactable by scammers, henceforth you won't be scammed. Xavier, your thoughts?
Well, I think that if you really want to be a complete nomad, just shut out to technology entirely, there is one way to do it, I guess, but definitely not an effective way, I would say, because everyone around you will still be vulnerable. So, as mentioned earlier, it's really a community effort. We shouldn't be running away from this issue because it's an issue. Instead, what we should be doing is constantly updating ourselves, learning about the new cyber habits. I don't even think that it's just about the campaign, right? So I always tell people that the Academy's SurSafe campaign, the ultimate goal of the campaign is to no longer have the campaign. Because what we are trying to do by educating the youth, having them pass on the knowledge to the communities around them, is to make this sort of cyber intelligence, as mentioned, to become a culture.
Yeah.
Right. So it needs to be automatic, like how you look left and right before you cross the road. It has to be like that. So eventually we have to reach a state where so-called stopping and thinking, right, and having that inbuilt a little bit of cynicism towards all these messages or emails or potential scams that we receive becomes a culture, right? It is automatic. Yeah.
So instead of shutting down mobile phones, arm yourself with knowledge at Cyber Youth Academy. Correct, Xavier?
Yes, excellent, yes.
And another question right here from Mr. Richard Chan. He's asking, how do you convince a victim of his continuous disbelief that he has been scammed?
This is a hard one. We do need good investigators, and we do have good investigators. That's why we've been very effective in talking to the victims. But we do hear of cases where the victims, especially overseas, we have collaborations, where victims are take the case of love scams, they're so in love with the idea of this good man, even when the police tells them that this is not really a person,
Yes.
it's a made-up character. Aileen, would you have a comment on this? And they're so fixated on this idea of this persona that they are in love with because they're seeking love. And in those cases, it's quite challenging. Even when the police present them the evidence, show them this photo exists in many other cases, they can't let go. But in many of our cases, the police have actually effectively convinced them that actually this is a scam.
Aileen, do you have when Dr. Majeed said that, I see you squirming in your chair a little bit.
So I have a story to share again. So I've got quite a bit of stories. So this is about the internet love scam victim. So my anti-scam center actually do live intervention. Whenever the bank detect that this is a possible scam, they will quickly alert our anti-scam center. Then my officer will try to communicate with the scam victim over the phone. So it is a case of internet love scam. So when my officer called that victim, the first one, and told her that this is likely to be a scam because the bank account that you want to transfer to is very dubious, it is likely that this is a scam. But she was very insistent. She said she know him and is going to marry him in 1 week's time. She called him her fiance. Then my officer was like, you only know the person for 1 week and you have never met that person before. How could it be that you want to marry But my officer was not successful. Just to share, we are not successful 100% of the time.
Yeah.
So she was very insistent. She's going to marry him. She needs to transfer the money. So no choice. We give up. Just hold on to this case first. So late evening, we received another call from another bank staff. And this bank staff shared that they suspect that this victim might have transferred money to a scam-tainted bank account. So this one is, again, like earlier, the story like that, it is, quite almost similar. So what we did was we called the victim. And then, again, this victim was also very adamant that she is very adamant that the boyfriend will not deceive her. So my officer got the photo of the boyfriend. That's the little part that we succeeded. Right. And then when my officer compared the two photos, it's actually the same guy. This is someone who's going to marry that person, and another one is a boyfriend. So this one is love triangle or what?
Yeah.
So that is where we went back to the first victim, and then we alerted the victim, and that was when she was convinced that this is a scam. Yeah. So we have got some of these stories. Love scam victims are usually the hardest to convince because they are totally brainwashed. They are blinded by love. We always say love is blind.
It's the emotional aspect of it, right? The emotional investment.
And also, as what DSC Aileen is saying, they are excellent groomers. So in psychological term, we call it grooming, right? They build you in, as what Xavier said, they say don't tell other people. So it's a trusted conversation. In that climate of trust, they betray you. So it's a cruel process that the scammers undertake. Yeah. And they feel no qualms about it.
Yeah. I have a related question right here. I mean, earlier on we talked about the famous OCBC phishing scam. Fortunately, of course, money was recovered. Question by Madam Imisi. She's asking, how can we recover money that has been scammed? Now, adding on to that, DAC, I want to ask, of course, the priority of the anti-scam command or anti-scam center is, of course, to clamp down on scams and make sure that people know of and are aware. Is recovering money part of that priority as well in this fight against the scourge of scams?
Yes. So we set up the anti-scam center in June 2019. The main purpose was to mitigate victims' losses. So just to share with everyone, before the formation of our anti-scam center, the banks generally take about 14 days to 60 days just to freeze a bank account. So by the time they received that letter from us, by the time they decided to act on it, more often than not, police did not recover any money. Ever since the formation of our anti-scam center, we have a framework under the Project Frontier, which I have earlier mentioned, to get the banks to freeze the bank account at a much faster rate, as well as to do fund tracing. Now, what happened is that we'll of course do our best to do fund tracing, but that requires a lot of effort by the banks. Currently, we only have DBS staff who is co-located with us. He is very good because they can do real-time intervention. We can trace the funds, where the funds goes to. But once the fund has left Singapore, usually we say that it's very difficult to recover. But in the next few months, we are working with MAS as well as ABS, the Association of Banks in Singapore, to get more banks to come on board to be housed at our anti-scam center to do fund recovery. And we really hope that we can do more fund recovery for our victims in Singapore. Yeah.
I'm just going to do one more question because of time, and this is, I think, up your alley, Xavier. Question by Madam Yoli: how can we teach youths to avoid scams on social media platforms such as Discord?
Yeah, definitely. I think Discord is one of the rising platforms. A lot of people use it for gaming. Yeah, so definitely there are a lot of vulnerable youths there. But I think expanding on that, it's not just Discord itself, because new platforms will come out with time, right? So once again, I would urge the people, public and private sector, to go towards the direction that SurfSafe is actually going, right? So teach them a foundation, right? It's not about just, although knowing about the current scams is definitely important, but these scammers, they move so rapidly. Even if we are able to track them down, they will think of the next thing. It may be psychological damage for now, but even for finances, even if you solve the issue of moving it overseas, right now we have crypto, right? So that's completely, you can't track it, right? So once you hand it off to, you get convinced to buy crypto with it, it's gone, basically. Yeah. So it really is about helping them to create a foundation to identify what scams are, how they can combat it, and also a community effort. How do I help other people that have been scammed?
Now, before we wrap up today's discussion, I just want to ask, our panelists right here, your advice for people on staying vigilant against scams. Now, we know, the saying, if the investments, if it's too good to be true, then it's most likely not true. Maybe we'll start with you, DAC, your advice.
Okay, my key advice is do not transfer money to anyone whom you have not met online. Yeah, so do not give away your access code, your password and one-time password. Just don't give it to anyone. All right. Yeah, over to you.
Yeah, my advice would be slow down, take a bit of time to think, check with other people, look out for other people as well.
Xavier?
I think slightly different angle here. Instead of advice for the people that are getting scammed, I would urge the people around to, being a scam victim is extremely difficult. So we really need to humanize the issue. It's not about being naive or or you lost such a huge amount of money, you're going to be in debt. But it's more about caring for the scam victims after they've been scammed. I think we really have to avoid cases where they turn to suicide or harmful behavior.
Very good advice, pieces of advice there. So just to reiterate, don't give out any OTPs, anything that is personal to people whom you've not met. And for you, stop and think, right? And of course, for Xavier, it's about humanizing the problem and really showing sympathy and empathy to scam victims. Well, thank you so much once again to our panelists, for taking time off for this webinar. Once again, we have Deputy Assistant Commissioner of Police, Ms. Aileen Yap. Now, she's the Assistant Director of the Anti-Scam Command of the Commercial Affairs Department. Dr. Majeed Khader, Chief Psychologist at the Home Affairs Ministry, and of course we have Mr. Xavier Loh, Chief Executive of the Cyber Youth Academy, which advocates the safe adoption of technology in Singapore. And of course to everyone who's joined us today, be it online or right here in the studio, thank you once again for taking time off to be with us on this afternoon. Now do check out ST's Stop Scams exhibition, also happening this weekend at Heartbeat at Bedok. This exhibition is in support of IMDA's Digital for Life Festival and is in partnership with Singapore Pools. For more on ST's Stop Scams coverage, you can visit our microsite as well, that is at str.sg/stopscams. And also don't forget to subscribe to ST's YouTube channel for more videos. I'm Hairianto Diman. Take care and I'll see you soon.